to the Standards Committee, the last meeting before the election. Can I just first of all say that this meeting will be recorded for archive purposes. It's just a housekeeping issue that we have to advise everyone and for the public who are watching that this meeting is being recorded and will be satellite on the web. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Good morning. I think the 5 who were expected here. Are there apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. We've got apologies from independent members, Mr. Alexander, Mr. Watkins, and we've got an apology from Vale of Glamorgan Councillor Robertson.
Fine, but the other members are here, and I think we're quorate, and the number of independent members is fine. So that's okay. Good. Perhaps we can have a look at number 2 on the agenda, minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of January. Those are true account of what happened. I've read them through. I can't see any problem. There's a few noddings of head there. Thank you. So they can be signed as a true record of the minutes there. Item number 3, to receive any declarations of interest. Are there any? No? Nobody? No declarations of interest. Okay. We move on to the reports of the monitoring officer. The first item of the applications for dispensation. I don't think there have been any or any urgent ones. Is that right?
Yes.
So there's nothing there. Item 5, the overview and lessons learned of observations by independent members of Town and Community Council committee meetings. You will recall that over the last couple of years, the independent members have visited various Town and Community Councils and prepared reports. And we thought it was a good idea for a review to be held at this stage to see if we thought it was worthwhile, whether we should carry on, whether there should be any amendments. So perhaps I can pass over to Debbie for her report.
Yes, thank you. As members can see, the paper before you is a very comprehensive report, but to highlight a few points, members will be aware that any observations that require specific discussion or attention following the observations of the independent members are shared, if they're available on council meetings, with the chief executive or the chair of the relevant committee and the clerk and chair of a town community council. So that's been built into our normal procedure. Attached to the report is the pro forma, which independent members will be familiar with, and as the committee will recall, we consulted widely with town and community councils, so they had the opportunity to input into that pro forma. And I think that certainly paid dividends. That we found over the last couple of years, well, in fact, since 2018, since we started this procedure, that there has been considerable buy-in from the town and community councils at clerk and chairman level, because it feels as if there's a partnership working engagement in the process. So that's been really positive. And also, just to give a mention, that at the monitoring officer meetings that I hold with all of the clerks of town and community councils on a 6-monthly basis, I share generically information relating to good practice and the not so good practice, so that there's learning right across the 26 town and community councils within the Vale of Glamorgan. So again, that has been very much appreciated. Paragraph 2.4 of the report mentions that all town and community councils within the Vale of Glamorgan have had at least one visit, and then we've looked to prioritise those town and community councils where there were some issues potentially arising, or there was value in a follow-up meeting, focusing in on those. So some have received more than one meeting or one observation. The analysis of the pro forma, as set out in paragraphs 2.6 and 2.7, have reflected that the feedback from independent members is that the majority of meetings observed were conducted and managed well, and also were well structured and purposeful meetings, so really positive. Paragraph 2.8 also highlights some main points which have been observed in the feedback from independent members. Paragraph 2.12 then refers to the engagement with the town community councils, and I understand that my colleague Karen has some feedback from at least one clerk as to what their perspective has been from the process that's been rolled out. I don't know whether you want to comment at this stage.
Yeah, there's not much more to say other than I have had actually 2 responses over the last couple of weeks, basically saying that they were very pleased to have received the comments back. They've been reported to their council, and the council are very pleased as well that you've noted that those meetings are well managed and well run, and they think it's a very positive process. And during the meetings with the monitoring officers and clerks, they've also said the same, that it's been a good, valued process, and no one has said that they don't want it to continue. So go on and so forth.
Excellent, excellent. Then in paragraph 2.13, I've set out a number of concerns which have been identified, but as you're aware, we don't leave it there. There is that follow-up work to drive up standards and to share learning points with the relevant chair and clerk. Following the local government elections, then at paragraph 2.14, I will be seeking feedback from the chairs. I think that's going to be the next phase of this process. So my suggestion would be that we continue with the arrangement. I think it is paying dividends, but also we add on to the current procedure insofar as that we ask chairs and clerks of the community council for suggestions, and also for them to feedback with regards to the observations made by the independent members, and follow-up work that has been undertaken to address those concerns. So I think that's the next iteration of this process. Paragraph 2.18 also flags up a particular matter which has been dealt with since our last meeting, relating to comments at a scrutiny committee. The focus very much has been over the last 2 years to focus on town and community councils, but there was that occasion for the chair of this committee and also vice chair to view the footage of a scrutiny committee on the 10th of February, and that did result in an apology by the chairman being given at the next meeting, that scrutiny committee on the 10th of March. So unless there are any particular clues, I haven't got any further points to raise, and I'm happy to deal with any questions.
No, thank you very much. It's a good report. I'm certainly in favour of it continuing. Does anybody want to make any comments or possibly disagree with that? Mrs. Hallett, you've got no. You agree. Everybody agrees with that. Going through it, we've got the pro forma which is referred to at 2.3, and we've got a copy of that. I thought this would be a good opportunity to have a look at that and make any alterations as we were using it. But having gone through it, I couldn't really find any changes that I thought were appropriate, except perhaps at the end there ought to be a sort of general area so that we can comment, because I found that at the end I would make a sort of general comment that this was either a well-held meeting and if and what was going on. Mrs. Tinsley and Mrs. Hallett, do you have any views on that? Mrs. Hallett, yours. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Tinsley, your hands up.
Thank you, Chair. I agree. I found it a helpful prompt. Very often the boxes were left blank because they didn't feel particularly relevant when I was observing the meeting. But I think that's absolutely fine. It's a very good prompt. I would agree we need a comments box. So yes, let's leave it. Don't fix it. It's not broken.
Okay. Mrs. Hallett, did you want to? Yes, you've got.
She's on mute.
You're on mute, I'm afraid. You're on mute.
I think I need IT training. Just one observation. I agree with what Lorna said. It's an excellent prompt. I mean, it really is good. On the first, you're welcomed by the clerk and seated in the public gallery. Could that be slightly amended to say that this may be viral, indicate that it's a virtual hearing?
Yeah.
That's about the only comment. And as Lorna said, it really is a good prompt.
So, what should we have for the last box? Sort of any other comments or general?
Yeah.
The ladies are agreeing to that.
On a very small point as well, Chair, I will be amending the proforma to number it because it's easier for us when we want to extrapolate the information for us to put into a document view. So we'll be numbering it much easier going forward. But that's only just a minor point.
Good. I'm not sure if Councillor Cuddy, Birch or Gray want to comment on this at this stage. It's not really relevant. No?
No.
Fine. I thought 2.5 was a good idea, so that we will, I assume that means that when we're asked to go to a council, we will receive the previous reports.
Yeah.
So we might be able to, if there was a problem, we might be able to say, well, that has now been addressed and this is the situation. So I think that is good. I think apart from that, I have no other comments. I'll open it to the floor. Does anybody else want to say anything? Mrs. Tinsley, your hand is up, but it may be a historical one. Councillor Cuddy, you want to say something?
Yes, I just wondered if Debbie knew what other councils were doing, principal councils were doing, anything like this.
I think from the annual conference that was held on the, I think, 9th, 10th of February, there was mention, I think it was probably the chair of Standards Committee from RCT that mentioned that that he goes out and about, or indeed independent members of their Standards Committee to observe. I'm not sure whether they have a pro forma. I know that certainly Richard Penn in his report, a copy of which we've got later on the agenda, that he identifies that this practice that we do as best practice, but yes, I'm not sure the nature of the documentation which are used elsewhere, but I'll certainly make inquiries. So I'm certainly happy to share what we're doing with a view to ascertaining what other monitoring officers and standards committees are doing elsewhere. So I think that's quite a useful prompt. So I'll have a look at that.
Thanks. Mrs. Hallett?
Oh, just to let you know that I actually know the Cardiff Council actually do a similar exercise. The thing is they have a less number of councils than we do, but yes, they do a similar thing.
Thank you. Is it intended that we'll do the same with the Vale? I mean, that was a learning exercise for us originally, for us to see how the council worked.
Yes, I think certainly from the local elections, that will be factored in, because of course we, could have. Well, we know we will have.
Sorry, just for it. You can face the owl.
I know we will have a number of new members because the members on the Vale Council is increasing from 47 to 54, and
Yes.
a number of members are not intending to stand. So yes, we will be looking internally and as well as to the town and community councils, and I think, you know, having regard to previous observations, just using our limited resources to best effect.
I'm sorry about that. I did knock it off, but this seems to have come back on.
Yeah,
I'm really sorry about that.
We'll forgive you this once.
Yes, please forgive me this once.
Right, good. Any other comments on that item before we move on? No?
With regards to the recommendations,
Oh, I beg your pardon.
if you're happy to
Yes.
agree those.
Top.
Yeah, so the first one relates to noting the observations of the visit.
Yeah.
The second one, noting that following the local government elections in May, a new schedule available in the council and town and community council meetings will be prepared for observations to be undertaken by independent standards committee members over the next 2 years. Thirdly, we accepted that at any time during the 2 years, the monitoring officer may advise that additional meetings be also observed, just so we've got that flexibility to build in. And then fourthly, just to note the verbal update, which is alluded to in the report relating to the 10th of February scrutiny committee. That's if yourself and the Vice Chair don't have any further comments in that regard.
No, that's all right. Is everybody happy with those recommendations? Yeah, there's some nodding. Good. So moving on, the Standards Committee Forward Work Programme. You've provided us with that. I don't know whether you need to go through it. Anything you want to highlight?
I think just to highlight the points in paragraph 2, and just so that members are aware, the next meeting of the committee will be slightly later than we're probably used to, because of the date of the annual meeting not being until the 23rd of May. And following on from the 23rd of May, obviously there will be the induction programme for the new members. So slightly longer for the first meeting we used to, as I say. Not mentioned in the forward work programme, but just as a reminder, the first items on the agenda for that, the 23rd of June meeting, will be the appointment of chair and vice chair. I've also mentioned at paragraph 2.3 the reference to section 63 of the Local Government and Elections Wales Act, and this is the provision which will require an annual report to be published by the Standards Committee, and we deal with that later on in the agenda. The legislation relates to, well, the legislation comes into effect on the 5th of May and will relate to the municipal year 2022-23. So not the current municipal year which we're in, which is 21-22, but next municipal year. And of course the annual report needs to be prepared following the close of that municipal year, so 31st of March being the close of the 2022-23 municipal year. So we'll bring that report to the Standards Committee in June 2023. So just to give that a mention, in case you're thinking, where is the annual report? So that's the timeline. And also just to mention, it's just touched upon at paragraph 2.4, it is picked up in the forward work programme that there will be a report feeding back to members of the Standards Committee regarding the training that will be taking place following the local elections. Just a slight typo there, because it will be a report presented to the June 2022 Standards Committee, not the 2023 Standards Committee. So just a minor point there. But yes, Appendix 1 sets out the proposed forward work programme for your consideration, with also just a number of NBs at the end of that for other reports which the committee are familiar with, but we were not able at this stage to identify when those reports would be available. In fact, the first two reports when they'd be available. So we would slot them into the next available Standards Committee for reporting. But other than that, it's a matter for the committee.
No, that looks very thorough. Any comments, Mrs. Hallett? You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Am I okay now, Chair?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah. And a background on 1.1 on the report. Should we now include, as part of the function of the Standards Committee, or make reference to the fact that an annual report will need to be prepared? Should that be included in the list of functions and roles?
The reason we haven't added it at this stage is that that piece of the legislation hasn't come in yet. It's coming in on the 5th of May, but obviously after the 5th of May, when we do refer to the functions and the role of the committee, we would be picking it up. And in fact, later on the agenda, you'll see that we've refreshed the council's constitution that does pick up this point, and you'll also see that we've been hard at work in the office so that we have refreshed the council's constitution with those provisions which come into effect prior to, well, as at the 7th of March when we reported it to council, and then we've also reflected that there will be a significant number of statutory changes coming in on the 5th of May, and the way that we've structured the constitution, we've drafted it in such a way that they will come into effect on the 5th of May. So yeah, not just yet that we've got that statutory obligation, but certainly from the 5th of May.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? No. Thank you for that. So that will be the forward work programme. The amendments to the Council Constitutions and Standard Committee Terms of Reference.
Well, that's nicely leads me on from the comment that I've just made. Yes, a significant piece of work which is shared with Standards Committee through the link at paragraph 1.1, so that you have that overview of the changes to the constitution. Hopefully that's been helpful, and it is drafted in such a way that come the 5th of May we do have the changes there almost in waiting, and that they'll come into effect on the 5th of May. Hopefully that is helpful. Within the report, it's highlighted in particular for the committee some of the specific areas for the committee just to be appreciative of. So in paragraph 2.2 in particular, it refers to the duties under section 62 of the 2021 Act, so the duty to promote and maintain high standards of conduct and to cooperate with the Standards Committee in respect of the functions of the committee by leaders of political groups, so a new statutory provision there. Also, the report to Council on the 7th of March addressed the extensions to the terms of reference and role and function of the committee, taking effect again on the 5th of May, to include the duty to monitor compliance by political leaders of the duties referred to, and also to provide advice, training, or arrange to train the group leaders in that regard. And then also, as touched upon, the requirement for an annual report. The next bullet point in the report also then ties in with that the functions of the full council again, which we've picked up in the redraft of the council's constitution, so that it reflects the timescales within which the annual report of the Standards Committee needs to be considered. Paragraph 2.3, just to give that a mention, following the training which will be provided to all members of the council, all new members of the council, following the local elections on ethical standards and code of conduct, arrangements will be made for the current chair and vice chair of the committee and myself to meet with the newly appointed group leaders of the council as soon as possible following the elections, so that there is clarity around their obligations under section 62 and also those of the Standards Committee, and an awareness that as part of the annual report, the Standards Committee will be assessing the extent to which leaders of political groups have complied with their duties under the Act. So we will be factoring that in, as I say, as soon as possible after the election, but certainly after the training for all members on the ethical standards. I think that's probably the key points that I wanted to highlight, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Councillor Cuddy.
Yes, I just wondered what the position of after an election, if there are independents or really independent and lone wolves, and maybe not wanted to be adopted by any party. What's the position of those sort of people who may be quite disruptive?
Yeah.
That's why they're a lone wolf.
Yes, absolutely, and they wouldn't be caught under these provisions in effect, because if they are single lone wolves, they don't form part of a group, and therefore wouldn't have a political group leader. So something for us to be conscious of, that we certainly could end up having a further cohort of individual independent members, and what I have done with regards to guidance, and I think that is slightly jumping to the next item, but with regards to the guidance that's coming through, I have made a point of making sure that's shared not just with the political group leaders that currently exist, but also with our existing independent members. And as I say, albeit they wouldn't be caught by section 62, I think it is important to share that data and share the data as we're rolling it out, so that they're not left behind, so they do appreciate what the requirements are for political groups, so that they can reflect on that with regards to their conduct, so they're sort of aware of expectations. But you're absolutely right, lone wolves would continue to be lone wolves.
How many do you think are needed to form a group?
Oh, I think it's 2 or 3, isn't it? Yeah.
Right.
But it is set out, I think, in the Local Government Wales measure of the number, but certainly a single individual cannot constitute.
And previously on the council, we did have a group that had formed like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Previously, yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions on that item? No? Thank you very much. The Local Government and Elections Wales Act, Standards of Conduct, Statutory Guidance, number 8.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So I'm sharing this draft guidance, which is currently out to consultation. So it's also been shared, as I've mentioned, at paragraph 22 to all group leaders within the Vale of Glamorgan Council, also the independent members, so that they have the opportunity, should they wish to comment independently of the council, or also consider the matter as this document is taken through the normal reporting route. So the proposal is that the draft document and the guidance and consultation paper will be taken to scrutiny committee, also and also to cabinet, so it will get good coverage within the Vale of Glamorgan Council. So set out within the body of the paper at paragraph 2.2 are the 5 questions, sorry, which Welsh Government are raising as part of the consultation process, and I've attached at Appendix A the consultation paper for your consideration and information. The responses are responses which I've pulled together as monitoring officer, but obviously it's a matter for the committee, and I'd welcome any comments. I'm more than happy to take members through my observations if that would assist.
Well, no, I don't think that's necessary at this stage. Hopefully everybody's read those. The only very small point I would make is in respect of question 3, we would like to know your views on the effects that the guidance would have on the Welsh language. Rather than saying no comments in this regard, we could say something like, we don't think it would have any adverse or positive effect. But that's my view. Does anybody either share that view or have a differing view? Yeah, I think you seem to be agreeing with that. So perhaps that could be affected. I think 4. I think the no comments is fine, and the answer to 5. Are there any questions, comments anybody like to make? Yeah. Well, thank you, Debbie. You've done a very good report on that, and the questions everybody approves of. So well done, and we'll see what happens next on that item. Good. Then we've got the Standard Conference Wales, the update report. I don't know how many of us were at that. I was at that. Well, most, yes. I think Mrs. Tinsley wasn't, but perhaps you could give us a brief report on that.
Yes, so I've attached to the paper the slides that were made available on the day, or were shown on the day. I've also attached, and you probably have numerous copies of this now, a copy of Richard Penn's independent report. He didn't produce separate slides, but he spoke to this report and highlighted his key recommendations. I think that certainly the conference was well attended, and I know it was well attended by members of this committee. I know that certainly Mrs. Hallett was in attendance, and also Mr. Watkins and Mr. Alexander. And forgive me if I've missed anybody, and also Councillor Cuddy, who did speak to raise a question with Mr. Penn. So yeah, very good attendance. We've been advised that the conference was recorded and that the recording could be circulated. We are following that up. We haven't had that through yet, but once that becomes available, we'll share that with the rest of the committee. So if you wish to view that or to dip in on any particular parts of that footage, it will be available to view. I think the main point, and I was reflecting on my notes that I prepared during the conference, and I think the main point that I think would be worth highlighting was the commentary from Lisa James of Welsh Government, which I was, listening out for intently about the timelines. So we've had the Richard Penn report, very comprehensive report that was finalised in July of last year, and Lisa highlighted that Welsh Government, considering that, that because of priorities around the coronavirus pandemic, that their timeline, which was initially to look to introduce some of the aspects of the consultation paper, the commission paper, prior to the elections, that wouldn't be possible. The timelines that were referred to as being autumn for further consultation with a view to any legislative changes being introduced in 2023. So we don't expect to see changes coming through, certainly this side of the election, but obviously we will keep a watchful eye on any of the proposals and consultation coming through from Welsh Government. I think certainly, without repeating, the contents of the slides, I think they cover off the key thrust of the comments which were being made. So Paul Egan spoke, and his slides are before you. The Ombudsman also spoke on the matter, and so it was a very well-rounded conference.
Yes, and I think it was quite interesting at the end, or I think it was at the end, that everybody was in favour of a message going to the government, effectively, come on, get on with this. That the whole of the conference was supporting the work that had been done and felt that we ought to move on. I can't remember the exact words of it. I don't know if you have them handy.
I haven't got the exact words, but certainly that was the gist of it. The gist of it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's been any reaction to that.
Nothing has come through. No,
I think
at this stage.
I think a lot of us were disappointed that a lot of work had been done and then it was just going to be put on the back burner. So that was my view of what happened. Yes. Mrs. Hallett, your hand up, yes? Yeah,
just two observations, Chair, probably addressed to Debbie. Under the Penn recommendations, increase of the use of local resolution of complaints. I would imagine that will have knock-on work for you, for your team, as well for the Standards Committee. Could I be right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a point that has been raised through the monitoring officer group, and I suppose that just an awareness that there could be a knock-on effect with regards for the need for additional resources. Certainly, and I don't think it was news at the conference. It was picked up in Richard Penn's report, as you allude to, about more matters being dealt with through that route. So yes, absolutely, additional work for monitoring officers, but also indeed for independent members of this committee. So I think it would have an impact across the board in that regard. But yes, we're watching this space.
And the other one as well, Debbie, was consideration of the role of the Standards Committee. That could be an interesting one. That was in the Penn recommendations.
Yeah, and certainly, we are seeing a broadening, aren't we, of the role of the Standards Committee through the Local Government and Elections Wales Act, and also the draft guidance. Certainly, a sort of improvement to the role and additional teeth, I would say, for the committee.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anybody else got any comment? No? Thank you. I think the idea also is we'll go back to, yes, sorry, Councillor Cuddy, I'll be with you in a second. I think the idea is that conference will be held annually.
Yes.
So that would be a good idea. Yes, Councillor Cuddy.
Yeah, I if memory serves me right, the new upcoming Ombudsman spoke. She came from Scotland, I think, didn't she? If memory serves me right. I just wondered if you had any reflections or knew anything about her.
Scotland.
Yes, I don't believe that Michelle Morris was at the committee. I know it was mentioned, wasn't it, that she's taking up her position from the 1st of April. I think it was the 1st of April or 31st of March. But certainly Nick Bennett, yes, did make that announcement that I think we were aware that he was due to leave. I think his period of office was extended slightly until the 31st of March. But yes, we have a new Public Service Ombudsman for Wales, Michelle Morris, who is currently the Managing Director of Blaenau Gwent County Borough Council. And I think it's also mentioned, I think Nick Bennett also mentioned, and something that I wasn't aware of, albeit that I do know Michelle through election days, that she was a monitoring officer in Scotland, I think he mentioned, for 10 years. So yeah, she has that experience.
Good.
Okay. But you don't know you don't know what her style might be at all. No advice in that respect.
I do know Michelle. She was a regional returning officer when I was a regional returning officer. So I've attended many meetings and got to know her quite well. But yes, I'm sure she will bring her own style to the new job. But yes, it'll be interesting to see how she takes up the new mantle.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Debbie, for that. We move on to item 10, update following a meeting with representatives of Surrey and Lebanon Community Council and the monitoring officer. You will recall that there have been difficulties there I would say over the years, because it's changed recently. But perhaps you look forward to that report that you've prepared.
Yes. So the meeting took place on the 31st of January, and it was attended by the clerk, the chairman and vice chairman of the community council. Unfortunately, the chair of standards committee, we had technical difficulties, and despite best efforts and endeavours, we failed to manage to connect Richard. But Richard and myself did have the opportunity actually to discuss the meeting in advance, and also feed in and assist with formulating the agenda. So I felt able in the circumstances to proceed in Richard's absence. So it was a very positive meeting, I have to say. The areas that we covered off, I've set out in paragraph 2.2 very briefly. We talked about the conduct of members of the Community Council, looking backwards, looking back to the experience of this committee, my experience, my dealings with the Community Council, and also looking ahead, and certainly reflecting over probably the last year, and the easing in correspondence that's been coming through from that Community Council. I think it was recognised that it felt that the Community Council were turning a corner, and that they had appointed the new clerk, which was positive. And there were a number of positives, and I was able to advise that certainly the email traffic had significantly eased, so that albeit there had been some difficulties, that also some positives. We also talked about the Wales audit report, including the recommendations. Primarily, our concern from the Standards Committee perspective was the first recommendation relating to the Members' Code of Conduct. But of course, there were a number of other recommendations, and the three that attended the meeting with myself were very keen to map out the work that they were doing, how they were programming that work, and that the Vice Chair also in particular confirmed that they were working through the action plan that had been agreed, and update reports were being considered on a monthly basis, so that they were satisfied that the appropriate action was in hand, and obviously they were liaising with Audit Wales in that regard. So that was positive. With regards to the first recommendation, which related to the Members' Code of Conduct, one commitment that I did make is that with regards to the ethical standards training and Members' Code of Conduct training that will be rolling out following the elections, ordinarily we offer seats to a number of members from each of the town and community councils. We don't give a commitment to train everybody, because there would be in the region of 250 or thereabout members, but giving that commitment to train, in the case of Surrey and Lavenock Community Council, all of the 9 members following the local election. So that was well received. Also, we had a discussion about the training plan, which the Community Council would be required to put in place as a result of the 2021 Act, and also I gave an overview of the meetings with the clerks of town and community councils, and I'm pleased to report that the clerk to Surrey and Lavenock Community Council had attended my last meeting. So it was a very positive meeting, and certainly I came away feeling that the Community Council had certainly reflected on the report from Audit Wales, had reflected on previous experiences, and were mindful that change was required, and they needed to continue to work at that. So very, very positive, I would say.
Good, thank you for that. I see it's in the idea is somebody can attend on the 17th of May. I can do that. Have we had any? Have they notified us of any other meetings before that?
No, Chair, the ones I've listed are the ones that I've seen on their current website.
Yeah.
We are waiting for further confirmation, but as you've mentioned, you could do the 17th. If you're happy for me to liaise with yourself and the members, if you're unavailable to do any other dates, then obviously I can do that outside of the meeting.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're happy, I can go along on the 17th of May. With regard to the recommendations, are there any comments on that or questions? Debbie, no? I think there's been some good progress made there, and as she says, hopefully they've turned the corner. I think I went probably best part of 2 years ago now, so it'll be interesting for me to go back there and see what changes have been made. Good. Any other questions or comments on that? So those recommendations are accepted. Thank you very much. The correspondence with the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales.
Yes, there has been correspondence, as is usual, since our last meeting, given the confidentiality nature of that correspondence. I'll pick those matters up under part 2 of the agenda rather than in part 1.
Thank you. Any items which the chairman has decided are urgent? There's nothing been brought to our attention.
No.
Is that right?
Yes, Chair,
So-
I've got nothing urgent
So
to
there
bring.
are nothing there. So is it agreed that we now move on to part 2? At this stage, the public, if there are any public watching, will have to leave the meeting, and we'll have a short break just to confirm that this is the case.
Yes, Chair, I'll stop the recording now and in Teams, and the officer who's recording for the live stream will also stop the recording and let us know when that's been done.
Thank you.
Thank you.